Alright, hey everyone. So before I get started with what I want to present about, Caitlin Clark and just college basketball leading up to March Madness, got to give a huge shout out to Zachary K. Hubbard. If you guys aren't following him and are on my YouTube channel, I hope you guys are subscribed to him. And also want to just make it known to everyone that he does have a podcast on Spotify. You can find it, as well as a couple other places, I think. I'm not too sure what they were called, but it's called Wake the Fuck Up Radio with Zachary K. Hubbard. So I'm sure with that title, you should be able to find it pretty easily. And he's already put out 3 episodes. So yeah, just want to point that out to you guys if you're not aware. And another reason for this video is because I'm testing out the new mic I received in the mail yesterday from Zach. He gifted these out to a few of us in the community. Super generous, and I'm very appreciative of this whole thing, because it's probably not something I would have put aside for myself and actually invest in. Not for a while anyways, but I'm going to use it definitely as a motivator to get back into doing videos more frequently, live streams too, and with basketball coming up, especially going into the WNBA as well. But yeah, let me just talk a little bit about what I wanted to talk about, and that's Caitlin Clark, because she is the biggest name in women's basketball currently. And there's one main reason that I'm really annoyed by it too, and it's not because of the whole, it is annoying that she got put in the same category, to say that she beat Pistol Pete, Pete Maravich. I think that was wrong. But anyways, talking about her and her stats, because everyone's just so focused on how many points she's scoring, becoming the all-time leading scorer in all of college basketball and women's college basketball. So anyways, I want it to be pointed out that her turnovers for her career, look at her, she's played in 133 games for her 4 years so far, and right now she's sitting at 612 turnovers. Isn't that a scary number? Whenever you're thinking about, this girl is the number 1 draft pick projected to be in the WNBA this year. And that stat just stands out, and it's like a slap in the face. That just seems like that shouldn't be that high. And I wanted to do this in comparison, so I pulled up Wikipedia, but it does show you the previous number 1 draft picks from previous years. And most recent, Aaliyah Boston, but I'm not going to compare to her because she's a center, she's not a guard. So I pulled up Sabrina Ionescu, Kelsey Plum, just in comparison, because they played in about the same amount of games. Kelsey Plum played in 139, and she's a guard. And for her totals, still kind of high, but look, it's like 200 less. She had 436, and 3 of those years were under a 100. And then her highest turnover year was her freshman year, and she had 159. And here, Caitlin Clark's already sitting at 158 for this year. Already tying her high of last year. So, not one of her years was under 100. And, shouldn't we be improving with our, it just seems so sloppy. But, yeah, and so, and then, speaking of Kelsey Plum and Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Plum was the previous women's leading scorer up until recently when Clark surpassed it. That's interesting. And then comparing with Sabrina Ionescu, who was the 2017 number 1 draft pick, she had 403 turnovers for her career. And again, 3 of her years were all under 100. and her highest was 114. I mean, it just seems like all this talk about Caitlin Clark and her being the greatest basketball player all time, that's putting way too much icing on the cake. Like that uh I don't know, it's just been bothering me. But so I had to make that point. And even like talking about Caitlin Clark and how she's projected to go number one um, in the WNBA, the team with the number one draft pick is Indiana Fever. And just like I showed you, Aaliyah Boston, she was the number one draft pick last year, who also went to Indiana Fever. But it's kind of an interesting, like if they do end up going to if Caitlin Clark does end up on Indiana, I mean, it almost seems like a lock, since they're, and that's another thing. I mean, no one's talking about these turnovers. No one's putting that in the headlines or talking about it on ESPN or anything like that. But I mean, it just shows you like more proof of like how someone can be pushed so hard in the mainstream, like just headlines about one person and how it can like spark people's attention and make them think that they are the greatest of all time. You know what I mean? Uh, Anyways, so okay. So if something happened, like say, I'm not gonna say that I want this to happen, but the only reason Caitlin Clark won't be going number one is if she got like injured or something drastic happened, right? But okay, so seeing that she's most likely going to Indiana, I just find it an interesting duo pair together, Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark, because Aaliyah Boston, if you haven't watched one of my previous videos I did on her and with the statehood of Indiana, uh, their birthday, Aaliyah Boston's birthday is December 11th. And December 11th is also the statehood of Indiana's birthday, or whatever, their establishment date, like whenever they became a state. It's also December 11th. But what's interesting about the two is Aaliyah Boston was born on Indiana's 185th birthday. And we know basketball equates to 185. Okay, so bringing Caitlin Clark into it, Caitlin Clark, number 22, she's 22 years old right now, and she was born on the 22nd day of the year, January 22nd, in the year 2002, which almost is like another 22, and so with basketball equates to 22 and 185. But basketball equals 22, and she's setting all these records, right? Especially in these last couple of months after she just turned 22. And just all the 22s involved in her, and it's a basketball number, and how doesn't that just make sense? Like how aligned that is for her right now? I mean, and no surprise too that she went to Dowling Catholic, right? But yeah, something I've been paying attention to, like ever since I heard that Indiana was going to be taking number one, and then just how much the media has been just, making her big. But anyways, I think that's all the points I wanted to make. Besides, like, the March Madness tournament bracket will also release next Sunday, March 17th, along with the men's bracket. And this year it's going to be held in Cleveland, Ohio. It's going to be the 42nd tournament for the women. And that's another thing too, thinking about like how, okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more, but in case you're not aware, the WNBA Draft date is going to be on Jackie Robinson Day this year, April 15th. And, they haven't had that on April 15th since Brittany Griner was drafted in 2013. Brittany Griner went number one on Jackie Robinson Day, and we all know, like, all the 42s I keep bringing up with Brittany Griner, who wears number 42, and she was detained for exactly 42 weeks, but all the media and news headlines, they don't ever tell you 42 weeks, they keep it to 294 days. All the headlines will, acknowledge 294 days, but they just know how dumbed down America is and how we don't convert things, but that is equivalent to 42 weeks, you know. And that's another thing. Caitlin Clark also passed Brittany Griner. I think it was back in January. I blogged about it, but she also passed Brittany Griner in points scored this year, you know, and with this being the 42nd tournament, it is interesting that she is projected to be going number 1 on Jackie Robinson Day. You know, and then what else is interesting too that I was looking at a while ago, because I've just been trying to get caught up on, you know, women's college, like what they ended for their overall record for their season, their regular season. And you can see Iowa Hawkeyes right here. They went 29-4 overall this year. Again, I mean, there was a few others that also went 29-4, but just to see that it's the team that Caitlin's on, it does stand out too that they went 13-1 at home. 131 is a big championship number. But again, just like how I said that Griner was detained for 294 days. Remember last year, the championship date was on 4/2, which was a huge clue to me, and I finally awoke to it in the Sweet 16. Then that's when we pinned LSU Tigers to win it all, because Kim Mulkey coached Brittany Griner at Baylor, and you know, with the championship being on 4/2, and the big thing about that, I mean, there are so many things, but we were really looking at LSU Tigers, and they ended up winning the whole thing, going 34-2 for the entire year, and 342, like how the 342nd day of the year is December 8th, the day that Brittany Griner returned to the U.S. So she came home on the 342nd day of the year, and a few months later, her previous coach, Kim Mulkey, goes 34-2 and wins the whole tournament on the date 4/2. And just, I mean, it's so intertwined, and you just gotta, I mean, there's no lie about it. Like, this is really how it works. And this is obviously tied in with our news and our sports and just everything but there's just so much going on in our daily lives. Like, people just, yeah, they just don't want to awaken to it or see what's really happening. I mean, that just makes so much sense. And so I feel like it's going to carry over this year, because again, like Baylor University, where Brittany Griner went, where Kim Mulkey coached her, Baylor just retired Brittany Griner's number 42 jersey on this past February 18th, you know, which I'm surprised it wasn't February 17th, because that would have been what the anniversary date of her detainment. She was supposedly detained on February 17th, which we know as Michael Jordan's birthday. And yeah, so, but yeah, so the 42 is still in there, and it ties with a lot of things, like how we just had the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was just on the 42nd day of the year, you know, and we just had Mahomes win it, and they went 4-2. Like, it's just, yeah, it's so wild, but I mean, that's what clues us in, and it's something to pay attention to. But anyways, I'll talk a lot more about the women's college basketball later, and then again, the WNBA does start in May, so we'll be ramping that up again too on my Patreon. So, alright, I'll leave it there. See ya. Oh, okay. And then leave me a comment and let me know how the mic sounds, because there's a few tweaks I can make to it, but I've kind of tested it out here and there, so hopefully it sounds good. Alright, see ya.